Hi, I'm Sterling. You're learning American English with me. I'm doing a kind of not well planned video about the difference between do and make. Are you confused? The dictionaries tell us that the Spanish verb hacer means to do or to make. Those are two different things in English. Too often, what the native Spanish speaker does not completely understand, I mean, the native speaker who's trying to master English, too often, what Spanish speakers do not understand is how these two words, do and make, mean two different things. It's really simple, but only after you understand the difference, which sometimes takes some time to catch on to, I would say. How these two words, do and make, mean two different things. Do and make are used in English in two different contexts, and they cannot be exchanged one for the other. That is, you cannot say do when you mean make, and you cannot say make when you mean do. And when this happens, your speech sounds a little confused and unnatural. Because you, the Spanish speaker, you have only one word, hacer, and it means all of the things that make and do mean in English in different contexts. So after this video, you should understand the circumstances where you would use do and the circumstances where you would use make. And then with a little practice, with listening, then you should be able to start to choose the right word. Now, there's another possible complication with the word do, so I'm going to try to correct that right now. There are actually two different verbs in English that are spelled D-O. They're pronounced do. But one of these words, do, is an action verb. It means hacer. It's a verb that can be the main verb in any sentence. But the other one of these words, do, is an auxiliary verb. It does not mean hacer. Do is used as an auxiliary verb in a way that can't be defined in Spanish because Spanish does not need an auxiliary verb, do, as English does. This auxiliary verb do is used to form a question or a negative statement. And the reason is, the details of all that is a subject for another lesson in another video, but just realize, summarized very shortly, to form a question in English language, a sentence requires an auxiliary verb. And then once the sentence has an auxiliary verb, then its position, that is the position of the auxiliary verb, not the main verb, the position of the auxiliary verb is exchanged with the subject of the sentence. That's how you ask a question in English. You can't do it without an auxiliary verb because you don't do anything with the main verb. And to form a negative statement in English, the negating word not can only be attached to an auxiliary verb. That means you can't attach the word not to the main verb. That's the rules. So if you're going to say anything negative, or if you're going to ask a question, and you don't have an auxiliary verb in the sentence, you have to insert one. And that verb is do. In the sense of do being an auxiliary verb, do not get that auxiliary verb do confused with the action verb do, which means hacer, because they can be used together too. How do you do that? Just like that. How do you do that? The first do is a different word than the second do. How do you do that? The first do is an auxiliary verb for the action verb do. There's two words, do and do. They're not the same word. So now, if you have that clear, we're going to talk about how you use the two action words, do and make. And once again, the auxiliary verb do might also appear as an auxiliary verb to the action verb make. How do you make this understood? I just did in that sentence. How do you make this understood? Do is the auxiliary verb I needed for asking that question, and it modifies the action verb make. So, but the basic difference between do and make as action verbs is you do activities that were already there, just waiting for someone to do them. But when you create something that did not exist before, you make it. You do an activity where nothing new is being created, it's just happening, nothing more than happening, and it's not new. For example, I do the dishes. That means I wash them. I'm not creating any new dishes, I'm just cleaning them. I do the laundry. That means I wash it. I'm not making any new clothing, I'm just washing the clothing that exists already. I do my homework. That's an assignment. It's a task that already existed. And I'm carrying out the task of an assignment that already existed when I do my homework. So I do any kind of work when I'm carrying out the work itself. The work already exists. I'm not creating the work. It's already there to do. But, of course, I can make work. If it did not exist before, I can create the work. And then it will have to be done by someone. For example, if the government wants to build a new road, a new highway, then they create a design. They write a contract. Then they seek people to do the work of the project that they've just made. And as the people are doing the work, they're making a road. You see, they're creating a road. Someone had to make the project. The people who wrote the project, who were creating it, there were people involved in doing the creation. But the project itself, the work did not exist before. And before the highway was under construction, it did not exist before. So they have to make the highway. But the people that carry out the work of making the highway are doing the work. The activities of laying out the road, marking out the road on the ground, moving the dirt, pouring concrete or asphalt. This work exists already before workers are hired to do it. And sometimes if there's really nothing going on in your office, for example, when maybe there's no real work to do, you sometimes have to put on a show for the managers or sometimes for the customer. I have a long history of working for defense contractors in the United States, so I can tell you about some things that happen in that world sometimes. Uh, sometimes you have to pretend to be creative, you have to pretend to be a responsible person. So, what do? You make work. And this is a sort of idiom we use in the English speaking world. Make work. It means doing something that's not really necessary. I know I worked for a lot of US government contractors, and on one job where I worked for about 9 years, a lot of times we had to make the appearance that there was a lot of important work to do when there wasn't really, so that the customer, the United States Air Force, would pay the company for more work that they believed was necessary. So we had to make a lot of work to impress the United States Air Force. And then we would sort of pretend to have to do it. And it was an awesome system. Nobody would ever really admit that this is what we were really doing. And I think there's a lot of that still going on today. Excuse me. Other things you can make. You can make a lot of noise. It was quiet before you made the noise, but you created the noise. You can even make someone do something, because when you make them do it, you've created an action that would not have happened unless you had made it happen. You created an activity. And then the person doing the work, the one you make do the work, carries out the activity of work, which existed before you made someone to do it. That is, carry out the activity of the work. You can make dinner because it didn't exist before you created it. You can make a difference. You might hear people say this. The difference uh, didn't exist in anyone's mind until you made it. You created the difference. So there will be some kind of thinking exercises associated with making and doing, with a lot more examples to make you think. So when you practice these, keep this difference in mind. Creating is making. Doing is simply carrying out activities that already existed, waiting for someone to do. So look in the description box for these exercises. I'm not putting them in there at the time of this recording because that's work. And so if you look and they're not there yet, well, that means either I forgot or I just have not got around to doing that activity yet. Maybe I didn't yet make the list of exercises, but I'll be doing that soon, carrying out the act of making it. So anywhere you'd be using the word hacer in Spanish, you're going to have to decide whether you're going to use the word do or make when you're speaking English. And until you get completely used to this concept of either creating or carrying out, making or doing, you're going to have to think about what's happening before you choose the word. That's long enough for this video. Maybe sometime in the next couple of days, I will create these exercises. I need to for a student anyway, but that's where I am right now. I hope this helped you understand the difference between do and make, and I'll catch you all really soon in the next video.